Drinking in America, or really anywhere, is not a very big taboo. It's very socially acceptable. And yeah, it should be. Drinking for a lot of people is an occasional thing that doesn't really affect them long term. You drink with a couple of friends at a wedding or at a bar or something, and then you sleep it off and go to work the next day. But then there's people like my mom. My mom was an alcoholic. She drank a lot. Sure, there were brief periods where she would stop, but as the years rolled by, it was very rare for there not to be a night without a drink in her hand. So that means every day I got home from school, work, practice, it didn't really matter. That same day, she popped open a beer. And another. And another. It didn't matter what she was doing the next day, she drank until she was drunk. And she was a mean drunk who liked to argue. There were school nights where she would purposely blast the volume on the TV in the hopes of getting one of us to come down. There were nights where she would come into our room while we were sleeping and chastise us about anything and everything. If we ever tried to defend ourselves, we were called ungrateful and pathetic. There were nights where I had to mediate arguments between her and my stepdad, some of which ended with the police being called. Slam doors and screaming matches, it felt like there was never a moment of peace in the 18 years that I lived with her. And when she drank, she loved to throw around accusations. Accusations at her own kids about abuse of each other, abuse of drugs, abuse of friends. There was actually a night where my stepdad had drunkenly threatened to hurt me because she had told him that I had purposely bruised my baby sister that morning when playing with her in the living room. I remember being so furious with both of them that I grabbed my bag and walked almost 4 miles at midnight from their house to my dad's apartment. I didn't really talk to them for a while after that. Not too long before that incident, my mom was diagnosed with cirrhosis. Cirrhosis is the 3rd stage of liver failure. It can be caused by a number of things like diabetes or hepatitis, but a good chunk of the cases are caused by excessive alcohol consumption. Liver damage and failure has 4 stages. Stage 1 is steatosis, which is basically just a fancy term for an inflamed liver. Stage 2 is fibrosis, which is scarring due to continued inflammation. Stage 3 is cirrhosis, which marks permanent or almost permanent damage done to the liver. And stage 4 is full-on liver failure. It felt like my mom was determined to reach that final stage. When formally diagnosed, she disappeared into a hotel room with our baby sister and did nothing but drink for weeks. There were nights where the money I was supposed to be saving up for college was instead spent on food for me and my siblings. And then, randomly one night, just a few weeks before Halloween, she returned home and acted as if nothing happened. She instead focused on making sure that all the decorations were in order. And that was the thing about her. In the moments where she was sober, she was able to convince us for just a brief moment that everything was fine. But then, on the night of Halloween, and after having binged for days on end, she became so depressed that she wanted to kill herself. I was at my dad's place at the time. I was home alone, and as I was getting ready for bed, I got a text from my brother saying, "Hey, mom's drunk," and she said she downed a bottle of pills. I immediately got a ride from a friend, and I told my brother to bring him and our sisters to our neighbor's house. And when he did, they called the police. Luckily, she never actually swallowed a bottle of pills, but it did dawn on me that there was something seriously wrong with my mom. I knew that she was dying. She then became overwhelmed with doctor's appointments and tests and medications. Anytime she grazed past a wall, she developed these big bruises. Her ankles, feet, and stomach started to swell, and her eyes turned bright yellow. Years of alcohol abuse had her body actively fighting itself, and it freaked everyone out. And that's the thing about addiction, especially when it comes to alcohol. Even when your vice is actively killing you, it doesn't matter. Your vice is no longer a fun activity, it's a need to get through the day. And in order to quit it, you have to be willing to. And for my mom, she did eventually quit, but she did so kicking and screaming. When I turned 18, I moved out of her house. I just couldn't handle being around her anymore. I would still see her from time to time. I would fill her in on what I was up to, stories about things that happened at work, creative ventures, friends. She even stopped drinking. And after years of not knowing when she was sober and when she wasn't, it was a relief to know that at a period of my life where a lot of change was happening, that she was trying her best to be there clean. But I was still very hesitant. I had a lot of things to work through that affected my want to see her. I would still force myself to try and go out on holidays and birthdays and act like I didn't have a care in the world. But on the inside, there was only that one remaining note. My mom is dying. And now every time I see her, she looks worse than before. The last time I saw her alive was on Christmas of 2023. She had given me a copy of Arthur Russell's World of Echo and the Beatles Now and Then on CD. I think she realized that she was on her last legs and wanted to try to tell me in a way that didn't outright say it. And then not too long after that, I got a call from my oldest sister where she told me that our mom was in the hospital, and due to complications in surgery, she might not make it. When your liver fails on you, it's no longer able to properly filter out what's good and bad from your body. And because of that, it's very common to have ascites, which is stomach bloating due to fluid that your liver is no longer able to filter out. My mom was originally in the hospital to get that fluid pumped out, and during the procedure, they punctured a hole in her stomach. And over the course of about a month, doctors were trying to see what they could do, but all signs pointed nowhere. The last time I saw her was at an end-of-life hospital. The entire family was there, and I was told earlier that day that my aunt was trying to keep her awake so that she'd be able to greet all of us. But by the time we all filled in, she was comatose. We then all lined up outside her room and spoke to her one-on-one. I couldn't shake the awkward feeling that I was talking to someone who I knew couldn't hear me. But as I stood by her bedside, all I had on the front of my brain was to try to make one thing clear, that even though the relationship I had with her was nothing short of bumpy, that she was still my mom. That next morning, I got a text from my aunt telling me that she had passed away. We ended up doing a balloon ceremony, partially because we couldn't afford an actual funeral, but also because we thought our mom deserved better than to just be cremated and spread out in the ocean. I'd like to think that the balloons are still floating out there somewhere.